thank you for joining us here. We hope to see you here many more times as we continue to have fun events such as professional learning sessions. We've done lots of different school groups here, and now we have our first official educator speaker series, and tonight with Martin Luther King III. So this is quite incredible. Thank you everyone for being here. So to start, I'm going to give a traditional territory acknowledgement. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the foreign directions, lands, water, plants, animals. The other part of this is, for those that don't know this, or know this about this space, we can broadcast in this space. So tonight we are broadcasting live. This is new for us. Okay, we're going to try this again. Thank you all for your patience. Text your friends that this is going live while we're waiting for John.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. And good evening. Good evening from the WE Global Learning Center. As some of you who are here live in the audience, you know, this is actually our first time actually broadcasting live from this incredible facility. And I actually just want to say, first of all, thank you for coming. Thank you for giving up marking exams and homework and all that you needed to do for being here, to all these amazing educators. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for being an incredible educator. We have an amazing evening this evening with an icon of civil rights and civic engagement and so forth as well. So we're so thrilled for this. And then having the opportunity to share this with all of you. We anticipate that literally thousands of individuals will be watching this live on YouTube and on Facebook and so forth. We actually have a community of about 5 million people on our social, so this is a really amazing opportunity to celebrate. And to have this as our inaugural speaking series, it means a lot to us. One of the most exciting things is actually we're here at the WE Global Learning Center. We actually opened up this incredible space in September. The whole space was actually donated from literally the chair you're sitting on to the building and everything in between. An amazing gentleman that this theater is actually named after, named Hartley Richardson. This is the Hartley Richardson Empatheater, not theater, Empatheater, because we teach empathy here. Is a really cool place, and he and his friends, as part of his 20th anniversary commitment to our organization, because we just recently had turned 20 years, it's been a long journey, he actually said he's going to actually provide this entire space for free for us. And think of this entire building as the ROM for social change, or the Science Center for Doing Good. And one of the really cool things about this building is we actually can have your students come, and we always have students literally here throughout the day, and actually learning leadership and doing civic education and training and opportunities to learn about how to change the world. It is so cool. And so not only is this entire space been donated to us, we want to, in turn, share it with you, so you can have a chance to use it in an effective way as well. So it's been an incredible year. Many of you have been involved for many years. I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience. I want to also express gratitude, so thank you. And I want to share with you a quick video of some of the highlights. It's about 2 minutes. And some of the things that we have done together, literally we, again, because so many of you have been involved in this, from WE Day Canada all the way down to the opening of one of our newest medical programs internationally in Kenya. So let's watch the video. Fingers crossed the audio works. And here's what we've been able to accomplish this past year together.
Einstein once said, "The challenges we have created for ourselves cannot be solved at the level of thinking that created them." We need to challenge ourselves to bring in new thinking, new perspectives, to challenge who we are, to challenge what we're doing, and mostly to create the new solutions the world needs.
Time to listen to the stories of the indigenous, to hear stories about now. We are blessed as a young country to be able to look to the wisdom of a really, really old country. Yours is the first generation in the new and real Canada. I love you.
Today we ask all of you to join us to pay tribute to the one and the only Gord Downie.
This is the best thing I've ever done. This is what I want to do. Nothing else really matters to me.
and that all would not have been possible with the hard work of an amazing team and, of course, amazing young people, but of course, importantly, all of you. To the educators who have helped lead this, to the educators who have brought your students to the WE Day activities, to all of you who have helped to learn the programming in your schools, got involved in WE villages, perhaps even traveled all the way to a Meet a WE trip in Kenya or India or Ecuador. Just such a sincere and humble thank you. We're so proud of this generation. We're so proud of your students. We're so proud of what they are able to accomplish, and I know you are as well. So on that note, we have some exciting things happening. Carrie will come up at the end and just provide some reminders. Some new things for 2018. I know many of you are very familiar with this, but just want to give you a sense of context. One of the things that we want to share with you is something called We Walk for Water. It's our big campaign that we're doing. It's going to be taking place on April 27th, but you can do it any day that you wish. The number one reason why girls can't go to school in sub-Saharan Africa isn't because there's no schools. It's because they have to get water for their village. Just think of how powerful that is. You could have a school and all the boys are going, but the girls aren't going because they have to get water for their village. It's cultural, and yes, it's just sometimes it's just practical, but that's often the biggest barrier. And so when we go to Kenya, I know many of you, I look around the room, many of you have been on these trips with us, and you actually spend time with the communities, and one of the things that we do is we actually go down with the women, and we actually go down to the river, and we get water with them, and we walk in solidarity with these girls and these women to help understand what it's like doing something called a water walk. What it's like not being able to go to school because you have to get water. And so what we're asking your students to do on April 27th or any other day that you so choose, but we'll have thousands of schools participating on that day, is doing a proverbial water walk. And it's the We Walk for Water initiative, and there's amazing resources, and they're in the back, and we'll make sure that your team members have this. And we've had schools participate in this informally in the past. Literally, you fill up water jugs, and you have your students walk around the gym or the track or your community, but they start to understand. They start to get it. They start to realize that, you know what, that thing that we turn on in the tap, just we take so much for granted, and the ability and understanding of what it's like to be a girl in sub-Saharan Africa who's unfortunately walking for water. And the cool thing is there's incredible resources, educational materials, videos. This isn't just a fundraiser, it's really an awareness, understanding, capacity building, really understanding from your students what this is all about. And here's the coolest thing ever. For $25, you can actually give somebody clean water for the rest of their lives. For $25. Many years ago, and some of you participated in this, we actually had young people collect pennies, and they collected a bag of pennies. And that was so cool, but for $25 for a bunch of pennies, you're giving somebody clean water for the rest of their lives. And so here's another manifestation of that, and there's really cool stuff and wonderful things, but long story short, if you're interested, make sure you talk to one of our team members. They're on the back, they have the Live We t-shirts, or some version thereof, or simply go to the website, and you can have a chance to understand. So shifting. We had an amazing fall. And many of you joined us at WE Day Toronto, or perhaps at WE Day Family. We want to encourage you again to make sure that you're there next year. It was an amazing gathering. The cool thing about WE Day, not only is it free for students to attend, people like groups, like RBC and TELUS make it 100% free for us to put these things on for your students, which is amazing. But it's the people who give their time. And WE Day started right here in Toronto, started at the Ricoh Coliseum 10 years ago. 10 years ago, the Ricoh Coliseum. I think some of you were even there. And now has grown literally across Canada, where we host WE Days. Literally across the US, where we now host WE Days. And all the way even in London, England, where thousands of students go into Wembley Arena and we have a chance to share and celebrate social change. It is so cool. And so it's amazing having people who, again, are so generous with their time to come and say thank you to these kids, your kids, our kids, saying thank you for changing the world. You know, we incentivize everything else. We incentivize, when you sign up for phone plans, and we incentivize everything. Why don't you incentivize kids making the world a better place? And that's what WE Day is all about. And so it's so cool to see this level of generation, these young people saying that they want to make the world a better place, and they're inspired to do so. And so some of the speakers who give it their time, every single year participate in one way or another at one of those WE Days are people like Malala, of course the late Elie Wiesel, who will never forget his presence at WE Day. People like Ellen Sirleaf, who was at WE Day UN this year with us, of course, who won the Nobel Peace Prize, and former president of Liberia. After the years of civil war, she brought that nation back into civility. People like Muhammad Yunus, again another Nobel laureate, or Al Gore, yet another Nobel laureate. Mary Robinson, the former director of the United Nations Human Rights Commission and former president of Ireland, and she was at the WE Day UN with us. Ban Ki-moon, former Secretary General of the United Nations, obviously was actually here giving of his time, opening the center in September, and he's been a great friend and a longtime supporter of the organization. People like Reverend Jesse Jackson, another Nobel laureate with Mr. Gorbachev, Jane Goodall, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and this fine gentleman. And so this fine gentleman is somebody I'm going to introduce in a moment. He's just actually standing on that side of the wall. He'll be coming in a moment. Please give him a big WE Day round of applause, because this is so cool that he's here today. He's a hero to me, and probably a hero to so many of you in this room, and his family especially. And he's given him his time. He's spoken at literally probably over a dozen WE Days. And he has traveled all across North America with us because he deeply believes in investing in the next generation of young people, akin to, of course, what you guys do as well, and that's probably why you're here. And I look back, and in terms of that legacy of social change, and I'm going to play this video, and in the video, it's a really important moment where Mr. King here, as father obviously, is speaking of his 4 children. And to have one of these children here today is very, very special. He's an author in his own right. He's a humanitarian in his own right, but he comes from one of the most remarkable families. So let's watch that video together.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a true honor for all of us. It's an honor for me. It's an honor for the young people we've had a chance to work with who have heard his message. Can we give a very large WE round of applause for Mr. Martin Luther King III? Good to see you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Thank you. I first thank God for the opportunity to be able to share this evening and to be back in Toronto with this most phenomenal organization. In a real sense, we all owe a great debt of gratitude to Mark and Craig Kilberger and their families. First, their mom and dad for producing them. But these gentlemen have created an organization that is second to none, that is transforming lives of young people every day. And whenever I've been asked to come and be a part of this effort, I always am ready and willing to show up. Now, I really feel like I'm talking to some of the most important individuals on our planet, you as educators, because children spend a great deal of time with educators. And while there's still a population of the world that unfortunately is illiterate, you know, I am thankful to you as educators for what you do every day. Helping young people, molding young people. I remember when I was probably in first grade, And I had a teacher, Ms. Montgomery, who I'll always remember. And it was because of not just what she taught me, but how she taught me. And later on, the principal of our school, who many wanted to emulate. Now, I didn't mean I wanted to wear a dress, but I wanted to emulate. She walked tall. She was a very proud woman. She had a commanding presence, and we were all inspired by her leadership, which is certainly what principals do. We in the world, I think, are at a very interesting juncture, particularly us in the United States. We've got some challenges, not that we can't overcome, by the way. But what will help transform our situation in our nation and really the world is what the WE organization is doing. Unquestionably, this organization is changing the dynamics of the world every day. In fact, when I first did my first WE Day, about almost 20 WE Days ago, I think Mark and Craig asked me to come to 7 or 8, and it ended up being all of the Canadian dates. And then I did Minnesota, and then I did, well, let me just tell this story, because what I said at that time after doing the Canadian dates was, as you're coming to the United States and you're building, this concept has the potential to create a tectonic shift in the United States, because you begin to focus not on you, but again, on we. If our nation and world community would have more focus on we, my goodness, we'd have a phenomenal world. Now, the reality is there are so many people all over the world who are doing incredible work, but our mainstream media organizations are consumed, and I should say more so in the United States, but all of them around the world, with sort of giving us some level of entertainment, not education anymore. There used to be a time when the news was particularly for informing you. Now they tell you what you think you're seeing. And at some point, you don't have the ability to decipher what is real and what is false. And so mainstream media has a huge impact on many of our lives, certainly in the United States. I say we can and we must do better. We have exhibited different behavior in the past, and I think soon we will exhibit different behavior again. Now, what is very interesting to me, again, and let me say, I've got to monitor my time. I know we have about 20 minutes, but I come out of a family of Baptist preachers. And I haven't gone into my preacher mode, but, you know, if I did, we might go over time. So I'm going to stay within a confined time frame, because we really have some important things and work that has to be done. And you, I guess, have to prepare for tomorrow, for those precious faces that you will see early in the morning. But I want to share a little bit of a perspective. This year is the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. And we just in the United States observed what would have been my father's 89th birthday, having a federal holiday named in his honor. And every year, people around the nation and really throughout the world observe the birthday. And I say observe because typically you think about celebration, but because of the state of affairs in our country, it's not time to celebrate yet. I mean, we can't celebrate when there are 60 million people living in poverty in the United States, which is unacceptable when you have a almost $20 trillion economy. We can't celebrate when there's an opioid crisis, drug crisis that is plaguing the world but the United States. We can't celebrate when women are still paid less than men. Now, that's getting ready to change quickly, I believe. I think no one could have predicted what has happened as it relates to sexual harassment and other issues in the workplace. But it is interesting that the women's movement is growing and growing. Just last week, as you may have seen, many cities all over the world, women demonstrated on last Saturday. So what I think is happening is we're in an action-oriented phase of our lives. And hopefully we will get over the superficialness of what we see on television, a lot of the shows that are just, well, they should be embarrassing. They are to me, but I'm just one person's point of view. What I believe and I hope can happen is programming can be changed. What do I mean by that? Well, in the United States, these statistics used to be true. They're changing a little bit, but not dramatically yet. 6 out of 10 movies were violent. 6 out of 10 cartoons were violent. 75% of video games are violent even today. And so when you raise the question, why is our society violent? Because we're not giving people alternatives. And some of it is self-regulated. In other words, we maybe have to stop looking at certain things. But there are other parts of it that hopefully a consciousness is evolving. We all use technology or attempt to. I'm not talking about the President of the United States, by the way, when I'm saying we all use it. But I'm saying people use, he's obsessed with elements of technology. He needs a little bit more balance. So, but what I'm saying is, you know, all of us went to school to learn how to make a sentence, make a structure, make a subject and verb agree. And, you know, I never knew I was going to grow up and I'd have to carry a kid around with me to tell me what does LOL mean. Now you send me letters, I don't even know what they mean. So I'm learning. We all have to learn. The day one ceases to acquire information, then one's life is over. We almost learn something every day. Certainly every week we're learning. Human beings are amazing. And yet we have just begun to scratch the surface of what we can become. Now, my dad may have been operating at maybe 15% of his capacity. And he and a team of people were able to transform the United States in a major way, working in the late 50s, middle 50s, to desegregate buses in Montgomery, working in Birmingham in 1963 to desegregate that city, which created a Civil Rights Act, working in 1965 in Selma, Alabama to create a Voting Rights Act, and in 1968 fair housing legislation. When you think about those accomplishments, the things that were accomplished, they were short of phenomenal. In an environment where many did not necessarily embrace what he was doing, as well as not just whites in America, but blacks. Because change is not always painful, but change is something that sometimes we reject because of the fear of the unknown. We don't know where it's going to lead us to, what is going to happen in our lives and our circumstances. But change is a constant and needed. And what I like significantly about the WE organization is that over the years they've taken the time to create this curriculum so that no stone is left unturned. And since we as individuals all have varying interests, there are all kinds of things, from the environment to women's issues, to issues of poverty, to building schools, to digging wells. The list goes on and on and on of things that people can have interest in. So in a real sense, while it may take sometimes one person to galvanize, all of us in our own way can be leaders, because we have to make decisions as to what we will enjoy, what is fulfilling to us. Now, obviously, you as individuals love what you do because, you know, it's not great compensation. I mean, it should be. I mean, if you think about it, whether it's the United States or even Canada, I'm sure, and your system may be a little slightly ahead, but the reality is, in our nation, we pay gladiators huge sums of money. In fact, some of them in 1 year make more than a teacher will make in an entire lifetime. Seems like to me that's a little backward. I mean, I like to watch sports. I mean, I'm fascinated and intrigued and certainly enamored by what some of our greatest athletes can do. But that's where it stops and starts. It's entertainment. Education and information is far more important. Helping develop foundations. You know, when we build our homes, I used to tell children that, you know, if you build your house in an ocean, in the sand, if you build a castle, when the rains and storms come, what's going to happen? That foundation is not strong at that particular juncture in the ocean or on the beach. But if you build your home on a strong, solid, concrete foundation, when the winds and storms come, your house will be resilient enough to stand the ages of time. Now, that's not totally true, but you get the point. Natural disasters come tragically, and tragically people lose their lives. But by and large, we must build our lives on a strong foundation. And when our lives are built on that foundation, hopefully we don't deviate too far from that foundation. And hopefully we can actually fulfill our dreams. Now, my dad had a dream, as we heard just some of those words just a moment ago. I don't want to say I'm sad, but I will say that that dream has not been fulfilled. It does not mean we have not made great progress, because we have. Certainly from 60 years ago, 70 years ago, black people were lynched in large numbers. So we've made significant progress. I mean, there's still police killings that some would say are as a form of lynching, but we've still come a long way. But we still have a ways to go before freedom and justice and equality becomes real for all humankind. What I learned, though, is it only takes a few good women and men to bring about change. And when I traveled with Dad as a kid to different places around the country, I remember watching as he got ready to present to an audience. And the thing that I remember most was he always had time for anyone who came up to him. And that's another thing, by the way, that I really love about the WE organization. Mark and Craig have some of the finest people on the planet working for them because they exhibit the same kind of positive energy that Mark and Craig. I mean, this organization is truly reflective of these gentlemen and the vision that they wanted to create, that they have created. And that means everybody. I mean, not some people. You know how some organizations, some people, hey, how you doing? Others, hey. There's universal consistency with we. And that is what is one of the ingredients that creates phenomenal success again and again. And so when young people see that also, they want to emulate what they see. Most people, in fact, want to engage in positivity and not negativity. And let me just check to see where we are time-wise. Got a few more minutes. But most people want to engage in positiveness. And we've got to find a way to create that climate. In fact, I'm working on an initiative for this year that will be with a member of Mohandas K. Gandhi's family and a member of Mr. Mandela, Nelson Mandela's family, to teach and train people how to use nonviolence to resolve conflict, and particularly millennials. We've got to find a way to create a culture of nonviolence because we've created a culture of violence, and we see what it is doing to denigrate our society and destroy our society every day. Again, we are better. We can do better. We're a much better nation than the behavior that we exhibit from time to time. Keep in mind, though, it does take a village to raise a child. And we've seen that happen. There are villages being erected all over the world. And if we could just get our media to promote that, and less of the other, we would see a different world. And our children would be blasted into air like never before. Now is the time, Dad would say, I think. Now is the time because the consciousness is awakening. People every day are exposed to more and more information. At least some people, if you choose to be. You can choose to be uninformed, or you can choose to find out every piece of information that you want to. That's the kind of society we're living in. There's no excuse for certain things that exist today. It's all right to have differences. We don't have to all agree. But we have to learn how to disagree without being disagreeable. That's the model that my dad and his team showed us, because he did not agree with what was happening. So protesting was one of the derivatives, but there were many other things that they did in the background to create change. And those changes are here forever. He often said that the ultimate measure of a human being is not where that human being stands in times of comfort and convenience, but where one stands in times of challenge and controversy. He went on to say that on some questions, cowardice ask, is a position safe? Expediency ask is a position politic. Vanity ask the question, is a position popular? But that something deep inside our souls called conscience ask, is a position right? Sometimes, he said, we must take positions that are neither safe nor popular nor politic, but we must take those positions because our consciences tell us they are right. You know, I'm so thankful for that quote of his, because every day there are decisions that I have to make. And quite frankly, most days and weeks, we all have to make decisions. If we allow our conscience to be our guide, we generally will not make a mistake. I mean, even, when you're driving your car and You run into traffic and you're thinking, I know there's traffic that way, but I'm going to try it anyway. But your gut told you, no, don't go that way. But we didn't listen to our gut. That's the conscience telling you. Let your conscience be your guide. And finally, I probably was 14 when my mom took me to her undergraduate college called Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio. And that particular college had a statue of the educator Horace Mann on its campus. And there was an inscription on that statue that made that indelible impact. And that inscription said, "Be ashamed to die until you've won a victory for humanity." And when I read that at 14, I was like, wow, that's kind of deep. So I'll say it again. Be ashamed to die until you've won a victory for humanity. You may say, well, Brother King, that's too grandiose. No. We can win a victory in our neighborhood. We can win victories in our schools. We can win victories in our places of worship. Some of us may win victories in our states. Some may win victories in our provinces. Some of us may even win victories in our country. And better yet still, some may even win victories in our world. But what those words really mean are, be ashamed to die until you've done a little something to make the world in which we all must live a little better than it was when you arrived. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much on behalf of myself and all of the educators and the people watching on Facebook, because I was on the side just checking out the feeds, and it's quite popular right now and listening to us. So thank you so much for sharing your inspirational words with us. So we have time just for a few questions. And the first question we're actually going to do is, because this is the Global Learning Center, we have people watching online. So we're going to actually pull up one of those questions from New York. Brooklyn, New York, Cheryl Swift, she's a principal at a Summit Academy Charter School, and this is her question for you. How do you think your father would address the bullying issues that plague many of our schools? Deep first question.
Yes, it is. You know, let me tell you how I addressed it, because I don't want to say how, I'm not sure that anyone, even myself as his son, can speak for my father. What I can say is what he wrote. And those are what we must adhere to, I believe, the principles that he wrote. But I was bullied as a kid. I went to a school called Spring Street School in Atlanta that no longer exists. We were the first black children to integrate that school. And one of my classmates at the time, it was about third grade, consistently called me the N-word, consistently was, why are you here? Why don't you go to your own school? And one day he was a very talented artist, and he was drawing, and what he was drawing was a battleship. His skill was incredible. And so I asked him, I said, well, what are you drawing? Battleship. Now, I knew it was a battleship, but I wanted to hear it from him. And I said, you know, that is really very good. And he looked up at me and he said, you think so? And I said, now, what I tuned into, unconsciously maybe, or consciously, because I had seen my father confront hostility, confront violence, confront segregation and racism over and over again, and stand up to it and find a constructive way to address it. But this young man obviously had never been, no one had given him any compliments. And that compliment changed the dynamics between our relationship. He no longer mistreated me. In dodgeball, he used to try to wear me out. I was good, so he couldn't quite get me, but, you know. But the point is, all of a sudden, it almost seemed like he stopped trying to throw the ball so hard. I mean, our relationship changed just because of how I chose to meet him. Now, when it comes to bullying, sometimes something like that works. Other times, we need a lot of assistance. And I think, you know, we need counseling like psychological and sociological. I mean, we need a lot of counseling because we live in a dysfunctionally functional world. Think about that. Because that's an oxymoron, right? Dysfunctionally functional. But that's what happens. Bullying is a dysfunction. And so you have to get right to the root of what is the problem? Why are you doing this? Do you have insecurities? I mean, who knows what it could be? We have to identify those individuals and figure out how do we transform those individuals. But again, whenever a crisis occurs in a community, whenever we have major killings at schools, psychiatrists and psychologists and sociologists come into those schools and they stay there for a long period of time. There are not enough psychiatrists and psychologists and maybe sociologists in the nation, but we need what they offer to help transform these young people, I believe.
Thank you. Excellent. So to the audience, we have a question up here, Jeff. Jeff is our director here at the We Global Learning Center who is helping us facilitate the questions tonight.
What's your name?
Jennifer.
And what school are you from and what do you teach?
Sinclair Secondary English.
Awesome. What's your question?
You were talking about the balance between change and giving a foundation. And as an English teacher, I wondered your opinion on the book To Kill a Mockingbird. And we've had a lot of discussion of, you know, should we still be using that? And anyway, I just wondered your opinion on that.
Okay, good question. Yes, I think it certainly can be utilized as a tool for instruction and should be. I think there's so much that we need to be exposed to as a society, particularly if we're in an insulated kind of environment where there are not others of other ethnic persuasions. And many of us live in bubbles. And, you know, it's like some in the United States don't understand why there's a certain interaction with young African Americans and policemen, and why, if you didn't do anything, you run. But yet, if you've seen over and over persons beaten up for nothing, if you've seen people shot and killed for nothing, when a policeman comes, even though you are innocent, you're going to run. But some who have not been exposed to that, who may encounter a policeman, and a policeman has a different attitude towards that individual, so a policeman is always helpful. We all, in a society, need policemen. And many policemen, the majority of them, do incredible work every day protecting and serving our communities. But there's an element that does not. So all I'm saying is there are a lot of tools that are needed, and I think that's one tool that certainly can be helpful with, you know, significant discussion.
Thank you for your question. Any other questions from the audience? Right in here, Jeff.
Can we get your name?
Sabrina.
And what school are you from?
Rouge Valley Public School.
What do you teach?
Grade 6.
What's your question?
So, you know, you alluded to this when you were talking about, you know, when we saw the clip of Martin Luther King, you said we have a long way to go. And if you know, I just recently watched the whole speech again, and a lot of the stuff that he does say, unfortunately, is still occurring right now. So, and with the current administration too, when we were in front of our students after that happened, and we were asked, how could this happen? And I wanted to know too, how do you respond to people, individuals who come up to you and say, I've done all of the things, you know, I've got the right education, I went to school, I worked hard, I have these skills, and I still don't see a change. I'm not getting hired, I'm still getting treated this way, and it's 2017, and it doesn't seem as if the needle has shifted enough for me to be successful. So I know a lot of times there's that meritocracy argument where you work hard, anything is possible, you can achieve it, where you have now students saying people can walk in now who don't have the qualifications yet could become president or still have these privileges, and they didn't do the things and we are, and it's not happening for us.
Okay, I apologize. Let me make sure I understand the question. What do I say to those who maybe have lost hope?
Yes.
Essentially. Well, number one, we can never lose hope, and I would encourage individuals. As I said, 75 years ago, black people were hung. If you look at the evolution, you look at the United States elected an African American president, and some would say, well, you know, yeah, but things got worse. No, they didn't get worse. The media has blown it up. There were, in Charlottesville, tragically, 200 people marching. That's a very, very tiny part of the United States. President Trump has probably 32 to 35% support. That's unfortunate. But the majority, the vast majority, a lot of people didn't vote. So the thing I say is, if you really want change, you got to participate in the political process. In the United States of America, well, out of 170 democracies, the U.S. votes at 138. There are 137 countries who voted higher levels, and so you wonder why Trump gets elected. When you don't participate, my dad used to say a voteless people is a powerless people, and one of the most important steps we can take is that short step to the ballot box. There are a number of issues that are being debated now, whether it's DACA, as it relates to individuals who are from other countries but basically don't know anything but the United States. I hope that's going to be resolved. It doesn't, if you listen to the news, it doesn't sound like it, but that something has got to happen. You cannot just, I mean, some would say President Trump is wreaking havoc. I would say President Trump is helping to mobilize people who've never been able to, who've never worked together, and strong coalitions are developing. And I think that what he will be able to do if he continues in that vein will be stopped, or will not be able to happen. So my point is this: if you look at whether there's been change in CEO behavior, not behavior, I mean CEOs. In other words, many of the corporations are still run by white males in the United States of America. But I think most recently, because of the climate, corporations are saying we want to embrace diversity, and we want diversity exposure and training right now. I think Price Waterhouse has gotten about 150 corporations together who are saying, in a time when the president seems to be saying something else, I would like to believe that his attempt is not to create a divided nation, but his words do that. You know, someone asked me, well, is he a racist? I can't speak to his heart, but I can say the words that he used last Thursday, well, the Thursday before the King holiday, were racist. Those words were racist, those sentiments. So, you know, I think that's got to be addressed in some way, form, or fashion. I think we need sensitivity, human relations, and diversity training right now. But not just in America, even in communities where you don't have other ethnic groups. It's important to understand. I mean, the world is getting smaller and smaller. The internet has brought us together.
I know we have so many more questions and we're really excited, but I am going to cut it off for the sake of the evening. But Martin Luther King III, you are a true inspiration to myself, to all of us, and we are so grateful that you're here with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Keep it on. Keep it on. Okay.
How awesome was that? I'm sorry I had to cut you guys off on questions. He does have another engagement, so. And where's John Taylor? Are we still live? Are we cut? Are we cut? Yes. Anyways, thank you guys for all